All right, Josh, thanks for sitting down with me. You're running for Mokena
Yeah.
Village Trustee this election, so a good opportunity to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
And so why don't you just start? Tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, man. It's really cool you're doing this. So I kind of grew up all over the place, right? Kind of all over the Midwest. My dad was a dairy farmer when I was born. He got a degree, came back home, and his brother and sister said, well, Dad's dead, and he has a farm, and we don't know anything about it, so can you run it? And so, I was just a baby.
Where was that at?
That was in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
No way.
Yeah.
I was born in Viroqua, Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
About 30 miles or 15 miles away, something like that.
That's cool. Yeah. No, the joke after I sort of realized where I was from was, well, La Crosse, I guess I was born on the banks of the Mississippi, like Huck Finn. And truly I was. The Gunderson Hospital is literally on the Mississippi, so it's not a lie. But Dad, the farm didn't work, and we kind of moved all over. We moved to Cincinnati, to Memphis, to Boise, to Minneapolis, 3 different places, to Germantown, Wisconsin, where I went to middle school, high school, and then my first spat with college at Concordia. And then we've been in Chicago since 2002. Dad bought a house in Green Garden, south of Frankfurt.
Okay. Any of those places you really look back and enjoyed living?
Well, so I always sort of reminisce with my dad and say, if you didn't move us from Milwaukee, and this was all promotion stuff, right? This wasn't like we're just going to pick up and find a new job. He was with TCF National Bank for 25 or 30 years. Wow. And worked his butt off, so they promoted him, and we kind of moved around, and he actually helped kind of sort of shape my career path and my college path. But when we reminisce, I said, had we never left Minnesota, I said things might have looked a little bit different. I still probably would have found my way to Chicago and ultimately to the southern suburbs, because this is as close as you can get to the country, still participate in the city. I said, I probably would have played hockey. I didn't play a lot of hockey. I probably would have gone to the University of Minnesota. There's just a lot to do out there. But, I obviously you have fond memories most people have fond memories of their childhood. Mm-hmm. I have fond memories of Milwaukee and Minneapolis and, pond hockey and baseball and, watching the Twins win the World Series, and then, it's not popular around here, but watching the Packers in the Super Bowl with Brett Favre,
Yeah, that can get you in some trouble around here.
Yeah, it's quite the rivalry,
So, you mentioned college.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
What for? What was that like?
College was a very short conversation. I had a bad taste in my mouth from getting my butt kicked in the state finals or in wrestling, the state tournament. I was one and done my senior year.
Okay.
And I wasn't done, right? Like I just had this, I was not done wrestling. And I remember coming back some Saturday with Dad, and he says, well, what do you plan on doing now that you're graduated? Because he says, you can't live with me forever for free. I said, darn it. I said, well, I was either going to go to the Marine Corps, like Grandpa and like Uncle Wayne, and some of my cousins were Marines. I was thinking maybe I'd try to see if there's a college that'd still take me, so I can walk on and wrestle. And he said, well, you better get on that pretty quick. So very, very quickly, from like May to July, I just started applying really, really late, and ultimately got into Concordia and Mequon, D3 school. Was able to wrestle a little bit. Ultimately gave it up after the first year. College wrestling is a whole new thing. But around that sort of conversation was, I said, Dad, I think I want to be a business guy someday. And he says, well, you should study accounting then. Oh, okay. Well, so what did I hear as an 18-year-old kid? Be an accountant, study accounting, right? Meaning go be an accountant. Mm-hmm. Well, after 2 years there, I'm like, this accounting stuff is miserable. He's like, I didn't tell you to be one. I said, study it, right?
Kids can't listen so well all the time, didn't we?
Yeah, what 18-year-old actually listens to their parents?
Yeah.
But then, I went to University of Northern Colorado for a year. I went to North Central. for a summer. Ultimately, when I said, you know what, this is what I want to do, kind of wanted to see the country a little bit, but Olivet, obviously right down the street, and we lived in Frankfurt. I said, you know what, I'm gonna work mortgages because I could at that time. The mortgage industry was blowing up.
What year is this?
This is like circa 2004, 3.
Oh, yeah. So in the prime of
it. Yeah. Mortgage rates were nothing, so you could throw a rock in the air and it would land on a broker, But I was able to do that through the bank Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and commute to Olivet Tuesday, Thursday. So I knocked out all my classes, 2 more years at Olivet, graduated, and then I was working at TCF still, like I said, doing mortgages. Moved into commercial lending, and then kind of right before the global financial crisis, pivoted to work. Well, it's all kind of foggy. It's a long time ago, but got into workouts. Decided I wanted to get my MBA, and picked Purdue. Knocked that out pretty quick, because once you're actually studying something while you're working in that industry, and then you're studying that same topic, it's relatable. So I kind of cruised through that, got pretty good grades. Got a CPA after that.
What were you thinking at that time professionally that you'd be doing?
I've never really met a banker that says I love to be a banker, right? I've met a ton of bankers that say I can't wait for what's next.
Yeah.
Even guys who have been in banking for 25 years. And I just sort of fell into it, but I thought it was interesting. And I really did enjoy, as tough as it was, the workout piece of it. When you get into workouts in commercial lending, that's a role where you either go to a real estate developer or a business owner or something, and you said, hey, we both signed this piece of paper that said you'll do these things, and you didn't do those things. So here's what my rights are, okay? Including all this nasty stuff, like I can take the property, I can close the business. I didn't want to do that. I thought that was kind of like waving the white flag, right? I wanted to actually help turn it around. Mm-hmm. Some cases you can't, right? If it's just a dead property in a dead location, nothing you can do. If there's some life left in a business, you probably have a lot of options. But I enjoyed that. But as I started, kind of getting, 10, 12-ish years in banking, I did start getting a little anxious about what's next. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe private equity, management consulting, something like that. And I think, frankly, by the grace of God, I ended up getting connected to the Ozinga family, who it was kind of just a chance encounter. I wanted to volunteer for a charity that they really sponsored, and had breakfast with Justin Ozinga, who's running for mayor of Frankfurt. Vote for Justin. It was just sort of a chance encounter. I wasn't looking for a job at that point. Like I said, just kind of getting a little itchy about it. I was working for Citizens Bank at that time, and commuting downtown. That's a pain in the butt when you live out here. You know that.
Yeah.
But got connected to these guys. They needed a finance guy, and Aaron Ozinga gave me an offer. And I still remember. I said, I'm really flattered. I really appreciate this. And the position was for CFO for a piece of their family business. And I said, I'm really flattered, but I'm not an accountant. You know that. Typically CFOs are accountants. He's like, I know. We got lots of accountants. We got tons of them. We need guys that can sort of help me with the different aspects of business, not just keeping the books, right? Not just producing reports. So started working for those guys in 2016, and I thank the Lord every day, because, but for that, I'd probably still either be banking, probably doing some production stuff, making loans, having clients and that. But
did you start at the Mokena office here, or where were you working out of?
With Ozinga, yeah, I was working out of that Mokena headquarters, which was like the best commute ever.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was living in Barrington Square, right off of Schoolhouse on 191st. So I think, even when we had snow days, it was like a 7-minute drive instead of a 5, right? So it was fantastic. But in 2019, the brother that I work for, Aaron, he's the middle, right smack in the middle of the 6 Ozinga boys. he said, "Hey, we're going to do something different. We make investments in our community. We make investments in businesses all over, and I was kind of aware of some of the other things they did, other than drive concrete trucks, but didn't really have a total feel for the scope." And he said, these need to be managed differently, and my brothers and I all agree, and I'd like you and I to go sort of start this leg of our family business that manages investments in other companies. So Ozinga Ventures was born in 2019. And so pretty much what that looks like today is Aaron and I, and we have an associate and a team admin, small team, 4 people. We work out of Oak Brook because it's closer to Aaron's office or to his house. He lives in Elmhurst. So he said, "Hey, we're going out to Oak Brook because my whole career I've had to drive hours and hours. And I know that you have a 5-minute commute, Josh, but it's my name on the side of the building." So
That wins over, huh?
he's like, "I'm sorry." I said, "Dude, don't apologize. It's not the way this works, right?"
Can you explain a little bit about what that means as far as you'll invest in other companies?
Yeah. So it's what you might think, right? Mid-sized companies that are doing, anywhere from $5 million to $100 million a year in sales. Either making glasses or tables or real estate. People that offer business services. Really kind of the gamut. I mean, the things we're looking at right now as a company are energy plays, real estate, industrial manufacturing, metal stamping, plastic molding, people that make hardware, tool and die, your traditional core Midwest, factory plant like businesses.
And
right?
is it more like mergers and acquisitions you're doing, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So mergers and acquisitions is company A buys company B, or they put 2 together and keep one name and go forward as a bigger company. We are really looking to make investments in people, and where we've had a lot of success is when you have, say, generational. Dad started a business, grandpa started a business, kids aren't interested.
Yeah.
Or maybe kids are interested, but they still need some leadership, and there's some succession issues, right? Ozingas have a fantastic reputation, so people seek them out and say, "Please, can we partner?" Right?
Yeah.
Whatever. Buy half the company, buy 25% of the company, buy 5% of the company. But I want a partner to help me grow, and you guys have a history of growing businesses. I want a partner who's going to do things right. And I want somebody who's going to help preserve sort of this legacy, right? Not some Wall Street group that just comes in and fires everybody and replaces them with cheaper employees and
Sure.
Tries to just pump it up and sell it. So,
And then you also get a partner in probably however they can help with other companies. You're building a network of.
You always get a subject matter expert when you have a situation like that, right? You get some guy who's all this guy's done is, I don't know, stamp bumpers for 30 years and it sold to GM. It's a great company, but, he's had 3 kids and they're off doing whatever and they're not interested. And, just totally pulling this out of the air. But, you'd come in there and you say, "Business is worth this. Yeah, we can get behind that. Here's the check. We're partners now. What are we going to do? We're going to grow. How do we grow? Well, let's look at our network and see if we can immediately bring more customers or help with logistics or, whatever."
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of comprehensive.
So talk a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Beautiful wife, Denise. She's definitely my better half. Much smarter than I am. I've got a daughter, Addison, freshman at Central, and my son, Colin. He's at MJHS. He's 12.
What do they think of you running for trustee?
I don't think they know what it means.
I thought you were going to say, "I don't think they know you're running." I was going to say,
my wife does. Sometimes she thinks I might have bit off more than I can chew, but I kind of tell her, like, "Hey, listen, and she does the same thing. She is a helper. If she can help anyone with anything, she absolutely will. And so it's hard for her to say, "I don't want you to do this," because she does the same thing. If you have skills and abilities, I think it's incumbent on you to share those abilities, right? That's sort of stewardship, and I just think it's important. So, I think they're excited because Dad's getting after something, you know. But the kids don't really know what it means. They know my name's on some signs around
Yeah.
Mokena. Their friends are seeing my face on things their parents are getting.
Yeah, that's got to be funny. Seeing you're
Oh, yeah.
hearing about your dad being on the mail, coming in the mail.
Yeah. The Christmas tree that the friends in Mokena put up. My daughter was like, "Dad, you're embarrassing me. All my friends are seeing your face on a Christmas tree." Like, sorry, hon.
Well, hey, at least I didn't see anybody draw any mustaches on anybody, so you guys must have done all right.
Yeah.
So talk about your time in Mokena. How long have you been here, and what brought you here? You talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. It was. So I bought my first place. I bought one of the townhouses in Hickory Creek in 2007 or six, and that was really. One of the things we have here is really convenience, right? I was driving at that time to Burr Ridge, and property here was affordable, reasonable. It was easy to get on the highway, and then my wife started actually working downtown for Bank of America, and that was super convenient, right? It was literally a 2-minute walk right to the train station.
Yeah.
So we've owned property in Mokena since I think, like I said, 2006. After we had my son, Addie's older, and then we had Colin. After we had my son, it's like, okay, you can't have 2 kids in a 3-bedroom townhouse. I needed some more space, and I'm a bit of an outdoors guy, so I needed room for snowmobile and stuff like that too. So bought a property in Barrington Square, rehabbed that whole thing, and then in 2021 we moved out to the Oaks. So into one of the smaller houses in the neighborhood, which is exactly what I wanted, right next to the park. But so we've been here as long as I've been a property owner, and I mean I love it. I love it, and that's really one of the motivations, right, for doing this is because, like I said, I think God's given me some abilities in finance and in business, and if I'm going to keep living here for the next 20 years, I'd like to have some. Be able to affect it positively,
So talk a little bit about that, the process of deciding, or how it came about that you're running for trustee.
Yeah.
And why? What made you want to run?
Yeah. So people ask sometimes, and I think I don't really ever have a good answer to the question. Like people ask, what are your goals? Where do you want to be in 5 years? I don't know, but I do know that tomorrow I have to accomplish these things, right? And then maybe the day after I can think about that. But so much can change in 5 years that I don't know what a 5-year goal is. So I got interested in I bring that up to say I got interested in sort of the trustee thing after talking at work about real estate development and, obviously Ozinga, wanting to grow, they're growing geographically. And we're kind of talking at work about the process, the municipal process. And some of the investments in other communities, just sort of around the country, it's challenging, right? And I just kept getting frustrated with this process of why is developing such a challenge, such a problem? Why is it that when a business owner picks a place where they want to be, or they want to put a new plant or whatever, it's like a 3 to 5 year process, or they just get told no. And so I just kind of got to thinking, well, what's the best way to get involved and affect that? Well, I asked Tim Ozinga. He gave me some advice. He actually connected me to George, who's running for mayor, and Jim Richmond, who's a former trustee. And he said, if you're interested in local politics, talk to those 2 guys. They'll help you out. They'll set you straight. So a couple of years ago, I sat down and had a lunch with them, and they just said, hey, maybe you run for trustee. We'd love to have some younger blood in there, and obviously you have accomplished in business, and you work for a company that's got a great reputation, not only in the community but in the state and nationally. Obviously, if you're working for them in the position you have, your references would check out, right? So I said, well, what does that even mean? And they kind of walked me through and said, sort of day in the life of a trustee, and they said, you're going to listen to everything from people complaining about where a park bench is to, streets and sand and wastewater treatment and police policy and, hearing about new businesses and things like that. I said, that sounds really interesting. Started asking around to see if we could get a slate, right? Because at that time, there were 3 open seats coming up, and ultimately that was the election for Terry Smith and Terry Germany, to where they got seated. But the question that was put in front of me is, well, see if you can't find 2 other folks to be trustees with and run as a slate, right? Mm-hmm. I found one, and I couldn't get anyone else my age interested in this, and I was sort of like, well, doesn't that kind of tell you something? Maybe we need to kind of change the image of this community for the next generation. That sort of civil service is something that should be valued and kind of fun, and might be something that's desired instead of like, oh gosh, I have a board meeting tonight, But that's really the motivation. Is if I wasn't clear there, the motivation is I see things daily in my work that I think would lend itself well, and I think it's sort of my civic duty to, if people in our community believe that, vote for me, and let me go to work for the community as well.
So talk a little bit about maybe how you feel that your professional experience will make you a better village trustee.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a good question. I think trying to marry the maintaining of the community feel with progress is not an easy thing to do, right? I've had the privilege of traveling a little bit for work, and you go to areas, and apologies in advance if I insult anyone from these towns that might be listening, but you go to Houston or you go to New Orleans, and stuff's just sort of popping up all over the place, right? Doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason. I don't know if you've ever been to New Orleans, but you drive along the river, and there are like chemical plants next to houses, next to churches, next to restaurants. There's no cohesion, there's no comprehensive plan, none of that. Having said that, obviously we're not that big. We're also not that dislocated, right? Mokena is very, very developed. I think there are some opportunities for some redevelopment, or some even some open spots. Obviously, we have 191st Street. There's property next to the Ozinga's headquarters that could be developed. There's still some restaurant pads off 191st that have been there forever. There's probably some things to be done to downtown, to Front Street, to make it more warm, more inviting. But we also need to be smart, and a lot of my friends tease me about being the old man, right? I'm 40 years old, but I act like I'm 60, right? Because I want to be in bed by 8:30, right? So I say that to say, for some of our residents who have been here for a long time, and they say, well, I don't want new businesses. I don't want more traffic. I don't want more pedestrians. I don't want more. I understand that too. And you don't necessarily want to put something that's going to put 1,000 cars on the street right in your neighborhood, right in your community. I understand that. And I agree. I don't want something that's super noisy. So I think like I said, my professional life and the experience that I have there will give me some unique perspective in marrying those two of we can responsibly develop. We can responsibly look at restaurants and things like that, retail districts that will bring taxes into the community, that will bring some revitalization, some development, some more options for some social things for our community. But also be responsible in making sure the community is still safe, making sure we're not overrunning the streets with traffic and destroying the roads and the sidewalks and creating an infrastructure headache for ourselves. So it's sort of just a byproduct of being in this business. You have to think about the whole picture. You can't just think about one piece of it.
If you see anybody getting off of I-80, you kind of see that southwest area, a lot of land movement, dirt movement going around there. And as well as the other side, kind of with the Ozinga, where the Ozinga office is, as well as those two centers. having worked there, and you ever have any thought, that area has really had a hard time developing and keeping good businesses.
Yeah,
The place where Doc's Barbecue is now another restaurant's going in, thankfully, but it's been a couple places.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or ideas how maybe there can be a change made that would make that more usable, more friendly?
I think you need to create a destination, right? LaGrange is not people want to drive through LaGrange, right? Mm-hmm. But you go to like Orland, right? There's plenty of parking. There's clusters of retail, right? And I think unfortunately when you've got take Doc's for example, I remember back when that was like a nightclub.
Yeah,
right.
Club Zero or Ground Zero,
Ground
right?
Zero. Yeah, I remember that. There was some guys in the community I was hanging out with at Olivet, and we'd go there with our girlfriends and my wife now at the time. But I remember that, and then it was I think dark for a time, and then there was a couple other restaurants and Doc's. It's you don't know it's there, number one, because it's sort of set off. But is anyone going to get in a car and drive right next to a highway overpass, unless you know it's there, and there's nothing else there, right? And you have Stony Point, and you have that, but the most successful retail districts have other things to do, right? You go there, you have a meal, and then maybe you do some shopping, and then you sit down in a green space. Maybe you get some ice cream. Maybe you listen to some live music, but you need to create pockets of clustered businesses that all sort of feed off each other. And
that's always been like a mystery, like you've seen good places go in. And I don't know if it's very difficult to get in and out of at times.
Yeah, it is.
But that's kind of a main entry point for our village. And so it's interesting to see what will happen on the other side and if or what development is. But just a thought, having worked over there, if there's any ideas to improve it or make it better.
Well, and again, George was quick to point this out when I started asking him questions. He said, listen, the best thing we can do is partner with our property owners and our business owners and make it, help do everything we can to make them as successful as possible. Because Mokena doesn't own those properties, right? But Mokena does have a responsibility to think strategically about what it allows next, right? It's not as if we could take that center and knock it down and start over, right? Someone owns that center, and they need to make a run of it. So how can we work with what we have, as well as with what we'd like to see developed, and make that all comprehensively successful?
Along those lines, what do you think the village can do to be more friendly and welcoming to business?
Boy, I think the I think the reputation right now of Mokena is a little challenged, right? And part of the reason I'm running with this group is that their track record and their reputation is they try to find a way to say yes to if someone comes in and their vision aligns with what we represent as a community, that board will find a way to say yes. But the board doesn't see everything. And I think a lot of times people just get frustrated because they can't get past, whoever might have an axe to grind with, X, Y, or Z. Like I said, I'm on the Economic Development Commission now, and we kind of see what has sort of made it past the first round, right? Or will be presented to the board. And I can tell you, there's just not a lot. And I think part of that is just due to the reputation that it's a process and it's difficult and there's agendas when it comes to working with the village. Well,
and the chairman of the Economic Development Committee recently resigned, and he told me basically it was just because he didn't feel like it was effective or it was doing what it should be to really grow. So, talk about that. What could you do? And with all of the committees, what do you think could be done to improve their effectiveness, as well as, people take time to volunteer for that. You don't want to feel like you're just listening to a presentation. Like you want to make sure you have a voice. So what can you do to improve that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Mokena needs, whether or not the friends of Mokena are successful in this election or not, Mokena needs to sort of be modernized, right? There needs to be more social media, more marketing, offering, and advertising on behalf of the businesses, identifying to the outside development world, hey, these properties are available, doing everything we can to really create interest. And I think if you're on the board, if you're on any commission or whatever, it's incumbent upon you to be more active than just showing up once a month and saying, yeah, I don't like the color of this thing, or I don't like how they're using that stone in this building, and then, drinking your coffee and going on about your way. Some of the projects I've seen, I need to ask the new chairwoman, is there a way that, I can get to know these people and have a conversation with them? Because there may be some things that might make their development a little easier to swallow, a little more palatable. But they're probably not going to get that kind of feedback through the board approval process. So I just said a lot of words there. I think that the short answer is better engagement from every committee that Mokena has in their sort of area of expertise with the outside world. It shouldn't be so cloak and dagger, right? All these processes are prescriptive. We have them written down. It shouldn't sort of be, yeah, you got to follow that, but you also have to do what I want to, right? That's big city Chicago. We shouldn't have that here.
What do you think are some ways that the village can improve how they communicate with the residents?
Yeah. It's such a cliche, but I think these days social media and a website is probably the best. And Mokena doesn't really have it, and what we do have is not actively managed. This is a pretty cool way to communicate and engage with citizens.
I think so.
I think the podcast is a fantastic idea. Just don't make them 3 hours long. But, I mean, we do have to recognize that. We have an eclectic demographic in Mokena of older folks and younger folks. And we need to engage everybody sort of where they are. I would like to actually see a little bit more, and I know we have a few, but I'd like to see some more print, right? Just like a community newspaper. Some people still like to have a cup of coffee and read the paper. I'm one of those.
Yeah.
I wouldn't read it every day. Once a month, once a quarter would be great. But and we have talked as the Friends of Mokena group about website, actively working the website, keeping a mailing list, email list, and keeping those short, sweet, quick hits, right? Hey, food trucks on front's coming out. These are the vendors. This is the time. Be there. And I know they use Facebook a little bit, but I think if you cover that sort of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and have someone actively managing that, I think it's probably the best way. So it's not a very imaginative answer, but it's just amazing we don't have that right now. But that would be one of the things I would push if I was elected.
Talk about how I mean, again, maybe it's cliche, but how you feel about transparency and what does that mean to you, and how would you bring that to the village?
Yeah, we had an event. We had an event last night, a meet and greet, and there was a gentleman who asked that same question, and George, I think, did a good job of addressing it. I think he was pretty charged up. The guy asking the question, not George. But I can't hide, right? And obviously, all the meeting minutes are public. You can go in a trustee meeting and talk. But I'm not interested in hiding behind any of that. You can check my LinkedIn. I work for the Ozinga family. I coach baseball. I coach junior Celtic football. If you have an issue with what I'm doing, you're welcome to come talk to me in the parking lot of Burkhart's or at the church, or I'm sure I'll make my emails and stuff available too. I'm happy to engage with people. I'm happy to explain. Melissa, who's running with us, she's a trustee now. She said, why don't we just put the budget back on the wall at City Hall so people can see where their money is going, which is a fantastic idea. Why isn't it up there now, right? If I'm someone who's interested in the municipal election coming up, I would ask that same question. Why is this so secretive? what are we trying to hide? I think transparency is key, and it was sort of, when we look at the broader, political landscape, people are suspicious of the other side. I'm not interested in any of that here in Mokena. To the extent we can share things, we absolutely should.
With things like the food trucks on Front Street, as well as some of the new businesses coming into town, you've seen that Mokena residents, and especially being a downtown resident, downtown residents especially want and have taken advantage of that and want something in our downtown. What do you think are some realistic steps that you could take as a trustee to develop and improve the downtown?
Yeah, so George and the group really I think, did the right thing by building a comprehensive plan. And I think that comp plan looks a lot like, this is the way we kind of see the development of what's undeveloped and what needs to be redeveloped. I do think that some realistic steps that can be taken is just further diligence and investigation into, who's going to be looking to leave the Front Street, whose property is coming up for sale. Does the zoning fit, right? Do you really want another house there? And I think part of that kind of comes back to the earlier question of, what would you propose here, and how do you get after that, and what's the responsibility of the village? We should know every developer within 100 miles and say, this is what we'd like to see done. And as properties come up for sale, we should be acquiring those and trying to create, I think, a little bit more space on Front Street, maybe a little more green space. Like I said earlier, really have to be mindful about, I think, traffic and noise and everything else. But realistically, what could be done? I think there's a lot more that the village could do as people move in or out, or people are looking to renovate or do things like that, that would get us closer to realizing that comprehensive plan that George and the group put forward, rather than just sort of status quo. Like, oh, this building's up for sale, great, sell it to somebody else that's going to do the same thing. And, 20 years from now, it doesn't look anything different than it does now.
Yeah. The village bought the site just south of the tracks on Wolf, and now going through trying to develop it. But then there's two other properties that have sat on Front Street vacant for quite a while. How do you feel about buying properties as the village? Do you think we should be doing that?
So, that's a fantastic question. If you're a trustee, if you're in municipal government, you have a responsibility to be prudent with the taxpayer dollars. If you buy something just because it becomes available, you haven't done your job, right? I call it that's freshman level stuff, right? Any township with some extra dollars can buy a piece of property. Buying it for a purpose is, now you're getting into junior varsity, right? But you're not at varsity, and you're not starting unless and until you say, this piece of property, there's actually 5 developers that are interested in doing this with this piece of property, which fits our comp plan, that our village has already sort of opined on and residents would like to see. And so we're going to do this, and as quickly as we do it, 30, 60, 90 days later, it's sold. 90 days after that, shovels going in the ground. A year, 2 years later, boom, new development, consistent with what you said you were going to do 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? That's transparency, and that's being that's strategic leadership. I don't think communities should just buy property willy-nilly for no reason because it becomes available. I think they should sort of guide and push toward that plan that's had some community feedback.
Are there areas that you believe the village could cut costs or increase revenues?
Well, I think the Mokena, I believe this is correct, enjoys the lowest as far as its piece of the tax bill. It's the lowest in the area. Friends of Mokena, to my knowledge, have done everything they can to continue, when those options come up to increase tax rates and things like that, to keep those low. I'm not real big on bagging on the opposition, but again, it is an election. I do think Frank voted last time to increase whatever portion of it was to have the full assessment, and the rest of the board said, no, we don't want to do that. And then he followed along eventually. I think it is, and I'm interested in maintaining this legacy. We want to keep costs low. I'm not really I mean, people are already stretched as it is. I mean, the cost of groceries, cost of cars and housing and everything else, cost of fuel. I'm not interested in raising prices. I think we can do a better job with what we have. A balanced budget, a great bond rating, to the extent they even have bonds, right? There's some financial things that I would personally like to look at and get better educated about before I would bring it up. And I think there may be some ways to better utilize what we have to create some cash to go do some more things. But as far as new taxes or anything like that, zero interest from me.
So one of the things, and it kind of came up last night, and it was, again, the gentleman that was a little worked up, is the idea of recreational and medical marijuana. Mokena had a medical marijuana dispensary kind of north of 191st, back in the industrial area.
Yep.
But back when, I don't know if you need the history or not, but when it was legalized in Illinois, Mokena voted to not approve it within. Since then, we've seen Orland Hills, Matson, New Lenox, Joliet, all kind of embrace it and approach it in different ways.
Yep.
Is it something that you think the board should reconsider now, look at again?
Again, traveling quite a bit, and this sort of marijuana, medical cannabis, whatever, is obviously been sort of pushed as an issue in the last 8, 9 or so years, whatever it is. And lots of states have legalized things. Oregon made every recreational drug legal. That was insane. Yeah. I went to Portland for business, and there's you don't want that anywhere near you, anywhere near your kids. Yeah. Now you go to Colorado, and their sort of dispensaries are typically bright, very secure in retail districts, very friendly. They don't allow solicitors. There's nobody. People can't just hang out there and use their product or whatever. I don't think Illinois generally has done a fantastic job of allowing it, because it is a source of tax. It's a viable source of tax. Mm-hmm. I don't think they've done a fantastic job of, other than through licensing, and like everything Illinois does, the first thing they thought was, how can we profit from this, rather than how can we allow it to be integrated in our communities, not from a user perspective, not from, we want everyone smoking weed. Not that. This is a business. They sell things that maybe we don't agree with, maybe like cigarettes or liquor or guns. I mean, there's lots of things that are for sale out there that people don't want in their community. Mm-hmm. There's probably a better way to, and just sort of through maybe, hours of operation, the look of a building, security measures, the relationship with the cops. There's much better ways.
And New Lenox, I thought was interesting. It is right smack on Route 30. Mm-hmm. I mean, right by Walmart. And, again, I don't want to say to lean one way or the other, but looking how other areas have looked at it, it might be something. Obviously, as we saw at your event, people are very passionate about it. Both ways. But
I mean, there's you kind of look at the dead retail centers in certain areas. They typically have a laundromat, a mini mart, and a vape shop, right? Yeah. So it does have a negative connotation. And again, at the end of the day, it brings a certain stigma, right? You walk into one of these things, it's like, man, people are going to judge me. But I think it's like anything else, really, any other type of business. Yeah. They need to follow the law, and you need to be mindful of where it is relative to kids, relative to your residential developments, schools. Sure. Keep it away from there. Keep it out in the open, in a retail hub, with maybe limited hours, and just enforce the rules.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that the village faces over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think, as simply as I can put it, I think Mokena is going to continue to get looked over in favor of New Lenox and Tinley Park and Orland in terms of new residents, new businesses, if we don't make a change in how we accept and invite these people into the community. There's not a whole lot of there's not a lot of places to develop residential in Mokena anymore. We have some commercial locations. I think it's a redevelopment play. But listen, with the access to transportation, 2 train stations, proximity to 80, Wolf Road, 45, Harlem, all these roadways, thoroughfares coming through our community. People drive right through Mokena to go to Frankfurt, to go to the 2 or 3 restaurants that Frankfurt has that are quality. Why?
Yeah.
Right? And that will just continue if we have the same type of leadership that we've had for the last 12 years.
Mokena has started to talk, or the trustees and the board has started to talk about down the road building a new village hall. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about that? What would you like to see?
I think if we were going to build a new village hall, some of the surrounding communities have these big sprawling, basically popped up out of a cornfield, like Shanahan, Plainfield area. These giant things, and it seems to be a waste of tax dollars, honestly, right? You can accomplish what you need to accomplish with a certain amount of square footage, and I think what I would like to see is if we all elected to do that and move forward with something like that, make it more sort of, not necessarily the building multi-purpose, but some more baseball fields, some soccer fields, some green space, maybe an outdoor music facility, maybe a little actual water park, mm-hmm. right? Maybe I'm kind of old-fashioned, but whatever happened to the public pool for that community? Not for everybody else,
My
but for
wife's
that
ears
community.
are ringing right now. She
Yeah.
keeps talking about a pool, like
Yeah.
Mokena needs a pool.
What happened to the public pool? Where'd that go? Right, Sandlot, one of my favorite movies. Everybody everybody goes to the public pool.
Yeah.
And again, if people say, "Well, you're going to bring in riffraff," okay, just make it, Mokena residents only, right? Show your badge. That's I don't think we should be afraid to enforce the rules. If we have them, these are the ordinances. Everybody signed them. The board voted on them. This is what it is, right? And that's okay. Not that we want to be exclusive, but at the same time, it's we pay for these amenities. Mm-hmm. You guys should be the ones to be able to use them. Mm-hmm.
So, say we get to election day and you're elected, and Trustee Matanius is not, and you're in office with kind of a mixed slate there. How can you still be effective as a trustee and get things you want to do if you were in that position?
Yeah. I love that question. And I think I worked for 6 or 7 years in that exact same situation. My job was to go sit across the table from people that didn't want me there. I was a workout guy, right? And you convince sounds like I'm trying to manipulate, but you sort of, put your cards on the table and say, this is what I can do, and this is what I want to do. How do we work together, right? I don't have an ego. I don't have a whole lot of pride. I try to live very humble. I try to see other people's perspective. I really do. Sometimes that's really challenging, especially when you sort of think maybe, well, I'm kind of thinking of this. Water's wet, the sky's blue. That's common sense. Someone tells you the sky's purple and water's not. It's not wet. It's like, well, we need to go back to day one issues here, right? I don't have any ill will towards any of the other trustees that may or may not get elected. I happen to think that Nick Clancy. Thank you, Nick, for having a coffee shop in this community. Something we needed. He seems like a bright guy. But I can work with anybody. I can find common ground with anybody. But I think to be the most effective, I think I'd encourage people up and down the slate to vote Friends of Mokena.
So you happen to be one of my son's football coaches, which has been a lot of fun the last couple of years. So talk about that. That's one way you're involved in the community and what you've learned from that.
Yeah. Well, what I learned from that is, there's a lot of lessons I learned, I think, from coaching. It's something I really, really enjoy. I get a lot of satisfaction out of teaching. And when I've showed these young men how to execute a move or do something, and they go out and they do it in a game and they're super excited, I get a rush from that, right? And it kind of gets back to what I said earlier. If you know a thing, it's your responsibility to teach and educate so other people can know what you know. Football's fantastic because I love kids. I there's my mind goes a million ways with coaching. I get to spend extra time with my son, and that was really the first sort of motivation there. And we actually took a travel baseball team for the reason that Mokena was sort of capped out when we started the team, and there was plenty of kids from our area that had some talent as on the baseball field and no place to go, no place to play travel baseball. So we started a team, and we had our first season last year. We're in our second season now. Junior Celtics. If you ask the athletic director, we had a developmental team our first year, and we pushed them real hard, and we saw them grow and be more confident. And our little developmental team made the playoffs. So I like to put effort and time into seeing young boys become young men.
And now, a couple years, you've seen them over and over, and these little 10U guys or 9U are turning into these monsters.
Yep. Well, we need some more monsters. If any of your audience is thinking about football, sign them up for Junior Celtics. We got a good thing going.
Yeah. No, that's fun. So just a couple kind of quick, light questions to wrap it up. What's your favorite breakfast restaurant?
Oh, I like the Maple House down there on 30.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Favorite fast food?
Well, I worked at a Wendy's when I was 14, so I'm still partial to Wendy's. But if I'm grabbing anything quick now, it's probably Smoothie King or Panda. No.
Okay.
Teriyaki chicken. I can try to eat a little bit clean, even though it's still full of salt, I'm sure. But
I figured you might have not be a easy trigger pull on that one. What's your favorite Mokena community event?
I do like the food trucks on front. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right, when the weather's warm and you can grab something to eat, even though I should probably start pulling the calories back a little bit. Christmas is my wife's favorite time of year. It's probably my kids' favorite time of year too. I love how we are doing way more with the downtown to make it Christmassy feel. And it was really fun every single night coming home, seeing it lit up, seeing the trees out there. That was special.
Yeah, that was good to see, and it's good to see the villages, as a plan to keep improving that and growing it every year. It just does a lot to add spirit, and that parade is so much fun.
Yeah. The 4th of July parade is always fun too. We have a lot of folks in the community that we know that have either coached their kids or we've known them for a while, and they get set up, really, really early, and it's like, hey, we're gonna be out there. Like, I'm gonna be in bed when you guys set up your tent. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'll be there when the parade shows.
Where's your spot? Where do you usually go for the parade?
So now it will be right by Aurelio's. It will be
okay.
right there. Some of the friends, the Lawsey family, they've been residents in Mokena forever. And they said, no, you got to be right here. They set up a tent. They get a Fiesta pizza there. And it's way too early to eat pizza, but whatever.
Well, you can get drinks at the VFW and slices of
That's
pizza at Aurelio's.
That's it.
So it's not a bad spot.
That's the spot from now on. Yeah, that's the spot from now on.
Nice. Well, you might have to walk in it this year.
I'd be glad to. I'd be glad to.
So what local business do you support the most?
Wow. Right now, Andy's.
Wait, you're talking all this about calories, and you're talking Andy's for you or for your kids?
They've got the cookie butter, whatever they call it. It's fantastic. It's the ice cream places.
Yeah.
It's the creamery. It's Andy's. It's Oberweis. And some of these are brands. I would love to see like a Jimmy's ice cream, right?
Sure.
Somebody named Jimmy, please open up an ice cream shop, please. Handmade stuff, handmade fudge. I mean, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything that sells sweets, man, that's my favorite.
If you were talking to a new resident, what advice would you give them to make them feel connected in our community?
That's a tough one. I would obviously encourage them to be listening to this podcast. That's a hard one because I don't think we do enough right now to really engage. I don't think people move to Mokena and say, you know what, I really want to get plugged in, because there's not an easy way to do it. If someone new moved into Mokena and said, well, you know, what's there to do around here? I would say, well, you can go to the village website. We do some food truck things. We have a 4th of July parade. You know, you've got a workout facility there at the Oaks, but you're going to run down to New Lenox or whatever for your restaurants. You're probably going to go to Frankfurt for their Bluegrass Festival in the summertime. You know, kind of shrugging my shoulders here, but there's not, I think that's kind of the issue, is there's not a way for someone to come in and say, oh, wow, this is what I can just do by going out my front door, stepping off my porch, and we can do these things. There's just not a ton, right? And I think we need to change that, and that's simple. That's a simple change.
I really appreciate you taking some time to sit down and talk to me and let us get to know you. So just you take a minute and just tell people why they should vote for you, your slate, come April 1st.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, thanks for having me. It's a great way to engage. The Friends of Mokena has a track record thus far, keeping costs low and trying to be engaging and figure out a way to say yes, right? If you need something to be addressed, if you need something fixed, if you'd like to start a business here, if you want to do anything in their community, the board and the Friends of Mokena had a history of trying to figure out how to get that done. If you vote for me, if I've inspired any confidence, I actually got a job this way once. This guy says, "Give me your closing line. You know, how do you want me to remember you in this interview?" And I'd never been asked that question. I said, I'm a normal guy, right? Like, I go to church. I love my kids. I love my wife. I like to watch sports. I don't have any weird vices. I want to work hard. You know, I want to engage, but I also want to just do my thing and then also kind of enjoy my free time, my quiet time, you know? So a vote for me is a vote for some business acumen, a lot of business experience. I've seen a lot of things. I don't get intimidated very easy. I'm not really going to get pushed one way or another. I like to stand on principles. My faith and this community and this culture, it's what I'm about. I'm not going to bring in a lot of sort of new school and super modern ideas. Also, not particularly interested in doing it the same way everyone else does. Right? We have our little community and our sort of benefits and our grouping here. People come here for that reason, right? They could live somewhere else, but they choose to live here. So I think we have a duty to maintain that. And you know, I think some subtle changes can be made. I'm not one to really come in and rock the boat per se. I'm one to come in and make sure things are done right and transparent, on time, on budget, sort of middle of the road, right? So definitely not the flashiest candidate, but I don't think your trustees should be flashy. I think they should work for the community and get things done.
Well, very good. Well, again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and make sure to watch the rest of our candidate interviews. You can see all those on the website, and be sure to vote by April 1st.